The sound hit him first, a sharp metallic crash slicing through the stillness of the nearly empty Safeway aisle. Nathan Cole stopped mid-step, his hand tightening around a bottle of Merlot. It was late, close to midnight in downtown Seattle, and the billionaire tech founder was just looking for an excuse not to go home to his silent, immaculate penthouse. But what he found that night would change everything. Before he could call for help, a second crash echoed. Cans rolled across the floor like scattered marbles. Then he saw them, two girls, no older than 6 identical, down to the tangled blonde hair and oversized jackets. One froze in terror, the other tried frantically to stack the cans back. Their cheeks were streaked with dirt, their shoes soaked from the rain outside. And in that one trembling second, Nathan Cole, one of Forbes' most powerful men, realized he wasn't looking at petty thieves. He was looking at 2 hungry children. If you were in his place, what would you have done? Would you call security, or would you stop and listen? Because what Nathan did next didn't just save their lives, it upended his own. And the secret hidden inside a single photograph would tear open everything he thought he knew about his past. Stay with me. This story doesn't end the way you think. Nathan crouched slowly, the polished leather of his shoes creaking as he came eye level with the trembling girls. "It's okay," he said softly, holding up his hands. "No one's in trouble." The smaller one, her name tag from a second-hand coat, said Lily pressed a bruised apple to her chest. The older one squared her shoulders. "We didn't take it," she said, voice shaking but defiant. "We were just looking." He noticed their pockets, bulging bread, an orange, maybe a granola bar. The same food his company's cafeteria wasted by the ton every week. His throat tightened. "How about we pay for it first?" The girls exchanged a quick, silent look, the kind of communication you only learn when the world's already failed you. Finally, the older one nodded. "Okay, but we can't stay long." Nathan paid for the groceries, ignored the curious glance from the night cashier, and led them into the cold drizzle outside. The air smelled like salt and diesel from the bay. He opened the back door of his silver coupe. "Get in," he said. "You need a meal and a roof. Just for tonight." The older one hesitated. Why? It was a fair question. Why would a billionaire help 2 strangers off the street? Nathan didn't have an answer that made sense even to himself. He just said, "Because it's raining." The drive through Queen Anne was quiet except for the hum of the engine. From the back seat he caught glimpses in the mirror, 2 pairs of green eyes darting toward the lights of passing homes, the kind of wonder kids shouldn't have to feel from the outside looking in. When he pulled up to the Cole estate, the house lights flicked on automatically. The brick facade loomed over them like something out of an old movie, elegant but not quite warm. His mother, Eleanor, was still awake, sitting by the window with a book in hand. She stepped outside when she saw them, her gray hair pulled back her cardigan, slipping from one shoulder. "Nathan," she asked, her tone hovering between disbelief and amusement. "You've brought company." "These girls need somewhere safe tonight," Nathan said. "Just one night." Eleanor's eyes softened the way only a mother's can. "Then we'll make it a good one." She ushered them in, without another question. The smell of chamomile tea and cinnamon filled the air. The twins hovered near the doorway, unsure whether to remove their shoes or run. Lily winced as she walked, and Eleanor noticed the scrape on her knee. Without a word, she fetched a warm washcloth and began cleaning it. Lily stiffened at first, but then relaxed. The older sister Ava watched carefully, always alert like a guardian, far too young for the title. As they sipped hot cocoa, Eleanor spoke gently, asking where they were from, whether they had family nearby. But the twins kept their answers short. "Careful." "We can't go back," Ava said quietly. "It's not safe." Nathan's phone buzzed with work messages, the world he'd built demanding his attention. He turned it face down. "No one's finding you here," he said. Later, as the girls settled into the guest room, he overheard them whispering through the half-closed door a list of rules. Don't tell names. Don't open doors. Don't lose the locket. The last one caught his ear. He stepped closer. Lily was holding a tiny heart-shaped locket, stitched crudely with gold thread. She touched it before closing her eyes. Downstairs, Nathan poured himself a glass of wine, trying to shake off the ache in his chest. That's when he saw the photograph on the entry table. It had been there for years, his late brother Graham smiling on Alki Beach, arm around a young woman whose name Nathan had forgotten long ago. For some reason, the picture looked different tonight. The woman's eyes seemed to follow him. A creak on the stairs made him turn. Lily stood there barefoot, her fingers wrapped around that very photograph. "Where did you get that?" he asked gently. She looked at him, then flipped the frame over. "It says your name on the back," she whispered. "And something else." Nathan took a step closer. In small faded handwriting were 4 words. For later, tell him the truth. The room fell silent. His mother appeared in the doorway, eyes wide, face pale. "Who told you to read that?" Nathan asked. Lily only touched her locket and whispered, "My mom." And that's when everything shifted the night the room, his life. Because the face in that photograph wasn't just a stranger from his brother's past. It was someone the twins knew. Someone still out there. Nathan didn't know it yet, but he had just opened the first page of a story that would unravel every secret his family had buried and change what he believed about love loss and the power of one photograph. The morning light in Queen Anne always came through pale and cold, washing the city in silver. Inside Eleanor Cole's kitchen, the scent of coffee drifted through the air, mingling with the sound of rain ticking against the windows. Nathan sat at the breakfast table, still in his shirt from the night before, watching 2 small figures at the counter. Ava and Lily were perched on high stools, their hands wrapped around mugs of hot chocolate steam curling against their faces. Eleanor, as composed as ever, moved quietly between them, slicing strawberries and humming under her breath. It was almost domestic, almost normal, until Nathan caught the look in Ava's eyes. She wasn't relaxed. She was calculating. Every sound, every exit, every movement in the room registered somewhere behind that careful expression. Lily clung to her locket the way a soldier might clutch dog tags, as though it held the power to keep them safe. Nathan had spent the night turning over what he'd seen the photograph, the words scrawled on the back, the way Eleanor's face had gone pale. For later, tell him the truth. He'd read it 12 times in his head, and it never lost its edge. But the girls didn't mention it again, and he decided for now not to press. "Are you going to school?" Eleanor asked gently, placing a bowl of fruit between them. Ava shook her head. Not anymore. That answer hung heavy in the air. Lily swung her legs under the stool, avoiding everyone's eyes. Eleanor didn't ask why. She simply poured them each another cup of cocoa and said, "Then you'll help me feed the birds later. We have a rather bossy blue jay who likes attention." Nathan admired that about his mother. She never demanded stories before trust was earned. She'd been a social worker once, long before his company made her comfortable enough to retire. She understood that silence often meant survival. Still, Nathan couldn't stop thinking about that photograph, the woman with sunlit hair standing beside his brother Graham on Alki Beach. He remembered that summer years ago before the accident. Graham had been in love then, though he'd never told Nathan her name. Nathan was in Europe expanding the company when it happened, the crash, the funeral, the impossible quiet that followed. And somehow, he had missed it all. Now, a decade later, 2 girls with his brother's green eyes were sitting in his kitchen. He couldn't ignore the coincidence. When the twins went upstairs to change into the clean clothes Eleanor had found, Nathan pulled the photo from his pocket. "Mom," he said softly, "you remember this picture?" Eleanor's knife stopped mid-slice. "Of course I do." Graham brought it home the week before the accident. Do you remember her name? Eleanor hesitated. Sophia. Sophia Marquez. She worked with a local outreach program near the pier. Graham adored her. Nathan stared at the handwriting on the back of the photo again. Sophia's name stirred something in him, something half forgotten. The girls. He began, then stopped. Eleanor nodded slowly. You think they're hers. I think there's more to this than chance, he said. Before Eleanor could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from upstairs. Lily ran in first, hair still damp from her shower, wearing one of Eleanor's old sweaters that reached past her knees. Can we feed the birds? Now, she asked Bright for the first time. Ava followed, quieter but less guarded than before. Of course, Eleanor said, grabbing a handful of seeds from the counter. The three of them went to the backyard, where the garden glistened with rain. From the window, Nathan watched as Lily laughed when a blue jay swooped down to snatch a peanut from her palm. Ava stood beside her, smiling in spite of herself. For a moment, the house didn't feel so empty, but peace was fragile. Around noon, the phone rang, Nathan's work line. He almost ignored it until the name flashed Jared Kingston, his chief of staff. Where are you? Jared asked sharply. The press wants to confirm the rumor you left a meeting to rescue 2 runaways. Tell me it's not true. Nathan's jaw tightened. It's none of their business. Everything's their business when your face is on the cover of Forbes, Nathan. This could spin fast if someone saw you. He ended the call without answering. He'd built his empire on logic, on numbers that made sense. But nothing about this felt like business. That afternoon, while Eleanor took the twins upstairs for a nap, Nathan went to his home office. He scanned the photograph, enhanced it on his computer, and zoomed in on a faint shadow behind Graham and Sophia. It wasn't much, just the corner of a park bench, a reflection in the glass of a food truck. But it was enough. Alki Beach. He knew that spot. The girl's duffel bag lay by the stairs half open. Guilt twisted in him as he glanced toward the landing, then knelt and peeked inside, not to invade, but to understand. Among worn clothes and a broken flashlight, he found a folded page from a small spiral notebook. It was written in a child's scrawl labeled Mom's Rules. Rule 1, don't tell anyone our last name. Rule 2, if something happens, find the man in the picture. Rule 3, don't lose the locket. Nathan sank onto the step. The man in the picture was that Graham, or him. He rubbed his temple. The handwriting was shaky, the ink smudged. Whoever had written it had meant it as a road map. When Eleanor came down later, she found him still holding the page. She told them to find us, Nathan said quietly, or at least to find Graham. Eleanor took the note, her eyes misting. Then, something's gone terribly wrong, hasn't it? That evening, the rain thickened into a downpour. The twins stayed by the window watching lightning curl across the sound. Our mom used to say storms mean the skies washing away lies, Lily whispered. Nathan met her gaze. Maybe she's right. Ava leaned closer to her sister, pulling the blanket tighter. We just need to keep the rules, she murmured. She said if we did, we'd find the truth. Nathan stood there, looking at them, their mirrored faces, their unshakable bond, and felt something shift inside him. He didn't know what truth Sophia Marquez had wanted them to find. But as thunder rolled over Seattle, he knew one thing: he wasn't going to let these girls disappear again into the dark. And upstairs on his desk, the photograph of Graham and Sophia glowed under the flicker of lightning, as if daring him to look closer. By the next morning, Seattle wore a different kind of gray. The storm from the night before hadn't left it, had simply learned to breathe quieter. Nathan Cole stood by the tall windows of his office, watching the city pulse beneath the clouds. Below him, people hurried along rain-slicked sidewalks, umbrellas tilting against the wind. The world kept moving. His world, however, had stopped. Two girls slept safely at his mother's house, and on his desk lay the photograph of his brother and Sofia Marquez, an image that refused to fade from his mind. It wasn't just nostalgia or guilt anymore. It was a key, and he was certain it unlocked something that had been buried too long. Jared Kingston stepped into the office without knocking. "You missed the investor breakfast," he said, tone clipped. "That's 2 this week." "I know," Nathan replied, eyes still on the skyline. Jared hesitated. "Look, I get it. You've been through hell since the accident, but whatever this new charity project is, it's starting to raise questions." Nathan turned slowly. "They're children, Jared. Not a project." "And the press," Jared countered. "They're already sniffing around. Someone saw you with them at the grocery store. Headlines about Billionaire rescues twins might sound noble now, but wait until someone starts asking why they were alone." Nathan said nothing. He had built his company on logic and control, but right now, logic felt like a cage. He dismissed Jared with a glance and left the building. Outside, the air was sharp with sea salt. He drove through the damp streets toward the Harborview Medical Center, his thoughts racing faster than the wipers on his windshield. He had promised the twins he'd find out what happened to their mother, and if anyone could confirm her name or medical record, it would be here. The nurse at the front desk looked at him skeptically when he mentioned Sofia Marquez. She tapped her keyboard. "We had a patient by that name 3 months ago," she said, "but she was transferred. No forwarding info in the system. Transferred where Nathan pressed." The nurse frowned. "Sir, I'm not authorized to share that." He slipped a business card across the counter, his voice low but steady. "You'll want to call me when you can. It's a matter of family." When he returned to his car, rain had begun again, soft at first, then heavier, drumming against the roof in relentless rhythm. He sat there gripping the steering wheel. The girls had trusted him. He couldn't go home empty-handed. By the time he reached Queen Anne, lightning was stitching the sky again. The twins were waiting by the window when he walked in, faces pressed to the glass, counting seconds between flashes. Eleanor was at the stove stirring soup, her posture betraying the fatigue she'd tried to hide. "Did you find her?" Ava asked before he could even take off his coat. "Not yet," he admitted, "but I found her name in the hospital's records." "That's a start." Lily's voice was barely above a whisper. "So she was really there?" "Yes," Nathan said softly. "She was." Ava set her jaw as if memorizing that truth like a weapon. "Then we keep looking." Later that evening, while thunder rolled through the sound, Nathan sat with them at the kitchen table helping Lily draw. She was tracing shapes on a napkin, circles, arrows, a map of something. Ava reached into their duffel bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Mom left this too," she said, placing it on the table. "We didn't understand it before." Nathan unfolded the page. It was a list of numbers and letters written in Sofia's careful hand. E12, KSS 47, Locker 213. At first glance it looked meaningless, but then he recognized something. KSS. King Street Station. "She used to take us there," Lily said softly. "When it was cold, she'd say we could wait inside where it was warm." Nathan felt a spark of clarity. "These are bus routes," he said, tracing the lines with his finger. "And this one's a locker number." Eleanor, drying dishes by the sink, turned. What would she keep there? "Something she wanted safe," Nathan murmured. Within an hour, he and the twins were on their way downtown. The storm had grown fierce, the city lights smeared through rain like watercolor. Traffic crawled along Alaskan Way, the wind howling off the bay. Inside the car, the girls huddled beneath a blanket, whispering back and forth. "What if she left it for us?" Lily asked. Ava squeezed her sister's hand. "Then we'll find it." When they reached King Street Station, the power flickered. The vast hall smelled of wet stone and coffee. They followed the signs to the locker's metal doors, lined in a row, numbered like secrets. Nathan found 213 and inserted a few coins. The latch clicked open. Inside was a worn violin case. He set it on the bench and opened it slowly. The instrument inside was old, but cared for its surface polished smooth. Beneath it lay a small brass key and an envelope yellowed at the edges. Ava's breath caught. That's her writing. Nathan opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet for Graham. If anything happens, the girls know where to find this. Trust the plan. Beneath that, an unsigned document, the outline of a trust fund, dated the year before Graham's accident. He sat back stunned. Sophia hadn't just known Graham, she had planned a life with him. A family. The storm outside cracked the sky open. Rain hammered the station roof so hard it drowned out every other sound. Nathan stared at the violin case, the key, the letter, and suddenly understood that the truth was much larger than coincidence. When they reached home, Eleanor was waiting in the doorway, worry etched deep on her face. Nathan placed the violin case on the table. She left this for Graham, he said, and for them. Eleanor lifted the key from the velvet lining. It's engraved, she whispered. Cedar Path 14. That's an address. Nathan looked at her realization dawning. The cabin. Graham's old retreat near Snoqualmie. Lightning flared again, throwing their shadows against the wall. Ava and Lily stood close together, eyes wide but fearless. For the first time in years, Nathan felt the pulse of something he hadn't allowed himself since Graham's death, hope mixed with purpose. The city outside raged, but inside that kitchen, under the hum of the storm, one truth became clear. The answers they sought weren't gone. They were waiting just beyond the rain. The drive toward Snoqualmie Falls cut through a sky that looked carved from steel. Nathan kept one hand steady on the wheel, the other wrapped around the small brass key that glinted between his fingers. Ava and Lily sat in the back seat, pressed close together beneath Eleanor's wool blanket. The storm had passed, but the clouds hung low, heavy with unfinished business. Every mile closer to the mountains felt like a step deeper into his brother's past and his own unanswered guilt. The road wound through pine forests, slick with rain. When they reached the old cabin on Cedar Path, the air smelled of cedar and wet moss, the kind of stillness that makes every sound sharper. Nathan killed the engine and stared for a long moment at the structure ahead. It wasn't the memory he'd held of his brother's retreat. Time had dulled the paint vines curled around the porch rail, but something about the place still felt deliberate, like it had been waiting. Eleanor touched his arm. "You ready?" He nodded, but the truth was he wasn't. Not for whatever waited behind that door. He turned the key in the lock. It resisted at first, then gave with a click that echoed louder than it should have. The cabin smelled faintly of wood smoke and old paper. Dust drifted through the slanting light as they stepped inside. On the mantel above the stone fireplace sat a jar of smooth pebbles, a broken compass, and a photograph of Graham standing barefoot by the river. Lily wandered to the corner where an old table sat under the window. "Look," she whispered. A thick leather ledger lay open, pages rippled from moisture. Nathan joined her, brushing dust away. Inside were rows of handwritten notes, dates, deposits, initials. Each month showed the same transfer, $3,000, to an account number he didn't recognize. Next to every entry, Graham had scrawled two initials, SM, Sophia Marquez. Nathan murmured. Eleanor leaned over his shoulder. He was sending her money. "For the girls," Nathan said. His throat tightened. He knew. All this time, he knew. Ava's gaze swept the room, sharp and deliberate. "He wanted us to have something," she said. "Mom used to say our father was a good man. that he'd never stop trying to find us. Lily ran a finger down the page, stopping at the final entry dated just 3 days before Graham's accident. Next to it, he had written something different. If anything happens, go to Nathan. Nathan stepped back, the air leaving his lungs. His brother had been planning this. Every payment, every letter, every clue, they were all part of something he never got to finish. Eleanor reached for the ledger and turned another page. Inside the back cover was a folded drawing crayon and fading fingerprints. 2 stick figure girls holding hands, a man standing beside them with a violin. In a child's shaky handwriting, for Daddy. Lily pressed her palms to her face. Ava blinked fast, swallowing tears she refused to let fall. Nathan's eyes burned as he looked at the drawing at the family his brother had almost had. From outside came the crunch of tires on gravel. A dark SUV pulled up, scattering pine needles in its wake. Nathan's stomach dropped. "Stay here," he said quickly. A man in a tailored coat stepped out. Charles Lang, one of his company's senior board members. Nathan hadn't seen him since the last quarterly review. Nathan Lang said, adjusting his scarf. "You've been hard to reach." "I'm busy," Nathan replied, standing squarely between Lang and the door. "I can see that." Lang's eyes flicked to the cabin behind him. "You've got quite a story brewing. Stray kid's secret accounts a dead brother. The press will eat it alive." Nathan's jaw tightened. "What do you want to remind you what's at stake?" Lang said. "You have investors calling for your removal. One whisper that your brother funneled company funds to a woman and her children and everything collapses. I can make it disappear, but I'll need that ledger." Eleanor appeared in the doorway, her posture calm but unyielding. "You're not taking anything," she said. Lang's smile thinned. "Mrs. Cole's sentiment is admirable. But don't." She interrupted, her voice cutting clean through the air. "I've seen your kind of mercy before. You think money erases truth, but it never does. It only delays it." Lang turned to Nathan. "Think carefully. You could lose everything." Nathan looked back at the cabin, the violin on the shelf, the ledger open on the table, the drawing clutched in Lily's hands. For years, his life had been built on control, on protecting what he'd built. But this was what his brother had died protecting. Not a company, a promise. He met Lang's gaze. "Then let it burn," he said. "Because I'm done hiding." Lang's face hardened. "You'll regret that." "I already regret enough," Nathan replied. He closed the cabin door. The sound of Lang's engine faded down the road, swallowed by trees. Inside the fire Eleanor had lit crackled low. Ava sat on the rug, tracing the lines of the drawing again and again, as though memorizing the man who'd loved them before they could remember him. Lily leaned against her sister, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Eleanor poured Nathan a cup of coffee and set it on the table beside the ledger. "You did right," she said. "But it won't be easy, I know," he said quietly. "But Graham didn't mean for any of this to stay hidden. If Sophia's still out there, she deserves to know what he tried to do." Eleanor nodded, then looked at the key still resting in his hand. "You opened the door he left behind," she said. "Now you have to decide what to do with what's inside." Nathan stared into the flames, the weight of his brother's handwriting pressing against him. Somewhere between the flicker of the fire and the shadows on the wall, he saw Graham's grin again, the same one that used to make everything feel simple. Outside, the rain began again, light this time, soft enough to sound almost forgiving. Nathan looked at the twins, huddled close under the same blanket his mother had brought from home. Their faces glowed in the firelight, fragile but fearless. He realized then that he wasn't just chasing answers anymore. He was building something his brother had never gotten the chance to finish. He closed the ledger gently and set it beside the violin. Tomorrow, he said more to himself than anyone else we find Sophia. Eleanor smiled faintly, eyes shining. And when you do, then we make sure her daughters never have to hide again. The fire popped, sending a single spark into the air. Nathan reached for the ledger once more, tracing the final line his brother had written, a message not meant to be found, but needed all the same. Family isn't who you're born to. It's who you choose to stand with when the storm comes. Nathan closed the book. Outside, the wind sighed through the trees, and for the first time since the night the cans hit the floor, he felt the weight in his chest begin to lift. The morning broke pale and silent over Tacoma, the light uncertain as though the world itself wasn't sure how to begin again. Nathan parked outside the small medical clinic on 6th Avenue, his fingers tightening on the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. In the passenger seat, Eleanor watched him quietly, her presence as steady as ever. In the back, Ava and Lily sat hand in hand, their matching faces pale with a kind of trembling hope. They had come here chasing a rumor a woman named Sophia Marquez, recovering from an attack admitted 3 weeks ago under a false name. Nathan wasn't sure what terrified him, more finding her or not finding her at all. Inside, the hallways smelled of disinfectant and rain-soaked coats. The nurse at the desk looked up as they entered. "Can I help you?" she asked. Nathan slid a photograph across the counter, the one from Alki Beach. Graham and Sophia young and sunlit. "We're looking for her," he said quietly. The nurse studied it, recognition flickering in her eyes. She nodded, once cautious. "She's here," she said. "But she's been through a lot. Keep it calm, please." When they stepped into the small recovery room, Sophia Marquez looked smaller than Nathan remembered from the photograph, her hair now streaked with gray, her skin thin against the hospital sheets. She blinked slowly as if waking from a dream she'd been trapped in too long. Then her gaze found the twins. Lily, Ava. Her voice broke on their names. The girls didn't hesitate. They ran to her, clutching at her arms, their tears mixing with hers. Nathan stood at the doorway, frozen between joy and shame, watching the family his brother had tried to protect come together again after years of separation. Sophia looked up at him. "You're Nathan," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," he said softly. "I'm Graham's brother." Tears welled again in her eyes. "He promised you'd find them if anything happened." Nathan took a step closer, unable to speak. He reached into his coat and drew out the folded letter from the locker, placing it in her trembling hands. "He tried," Nathan said. "He left pieces for us to find, a trust, a cabin, all of it." She opened the letter, her fingers tracing the words as though reading them for the first time. "He wanted them safe," she whispered. "But after the accident, I was told it was my fault. I ran. I thought the money would stop if they found us." Eleanor moved to her side, taking her hand. "You did what you had to do," she said gently. "You kept them alive." Sophia nodded weakly. "We never stopped trying to find him. I thought he'd come back. He wanted to," Nathan said. "He never got the chance." The room fell quiet except for the steady hum of the heart monitor. Lily climbed into her mother's lap, clutching the violin case they had found at the station. "Mom," she said, "he left this for us." Sophia smiled faintly, running her hand over the worn wood. "He taught me to play," she murmured. "Said music could say what words never could." Ava looked up. "Can you play it again?" Sophia nodded. Nathan fetched the violin from its case and handed it to her carefully. The sound that filled the room was fragile but pure, the kind of melody that feels older than memory. It was the song of everything lost and found again. Outside, rain began to fall softly against the windows. Not a storm this time, but a kind of cleansing. In the days that followed, Nathan worked quietly, setting legal things right that had been broken for years. He petitioned the court for guardianship of the twins until Sophia recovered, then arranged for Graham's trust to be released to them. For once, his power and influence meant something real. At the office, the board tried to contain the scandal. Charles Lang came to him again, this time with papers in hand and a lawyer at his side. Nathan let him talk for a full minute before sliding a folder across the table, a detailed report showing Lang's involvement in the very assault that had nearly killed Sophia. Lang's face drained of color. "You can't prove I already did," Nathan said, voice flat. "You're done." When Lang left, security escorted him out through the rain. Nathan stood by the window overlooking the Sound, the city lights smearing across the glass. For the first time in years, he felt something close to peace. Weeks later, Eleanor hosted a dinner at her house in Queen Anne. The twins sat at the table arguing cheerfully over dessert. Sophia, still frail but smiling, laughed softly at their bickering. Nathan watched them, the golden light of the kitchen making everything look like a photograph he wished he could frame forever. After dinner, Sophia found him in the hallway. "There's something you should have," she said. She handed him a small envelope, the edges yellowed his name written in his brother's handwriting. Nathan unfolded the note slowly. For later, tell him the truth. The same words that had started everything. Beneath it, Graham had written, "If you're reading this, it means you found them. Don't let what I lost make you afraid to love again. Take care of them the way you would have taken care of me." Nathan folded the note his chest tight. "He always believed people could be better than they were," he said. "So do you," Sophia replied. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Nathan walked to the foyer. The old photograph Graham and Sophia on Alki Beach still sat in its frame, sunlight frozen behind glass. He set it down, replaced it with a new one. The twins laughing with their mother on the same beach a few weeks later, the Seattle skyline soft in the distance. He turned the old photo over one last time and read the words again. For later, tell him the truth. He smiled faintly. "You did, brother," he whispered. "You did." When morning came, the house filled with the smell of pancakes and the sound of Lily's violin drifting down the hall. Ava's laughter followed bright and free. Outside, the sky had cleared completely, the Sound gleaming blue as glass. Nathan stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the world move again. The empire he'd built still existed, but now it wasn't the measure of his life. Family was. Not the one he'd been born into, but the one that had found him. 2 brave girls, a mother who refused to give up, and a brother whose love had outlived him. The photograph on the table caught the morning light scattering gold across the walls. For the first time in a long time, Nathan understood what it meant. It wasn't a reminder of loss. It was a map, a promise that love once given never really disappears. It just waits, patient as sunrise, for someone brave enough to see it again. In the end, Nathan Cole's journey was never truly about wealth or redemption. It was about remembering what love looks like when stripped of pride, power, and fear. From the night he caught 2 frightened little girls stealing food to the day he helped reunite them with their mother, his life shifted from control to compassion. Every discovery, the hidden trust, the cabin in the woods, the photograph that tied the past to the present, brought him closer to understanding his brother's final message: family isn't bound by blood, but by choice. Nathan learned that sometimes the richest people are those who have lost everything yet choose to give again. Through the laughter of Ava and Lily, through Sophia's healing and Eleanor's quiet strength, Nathan found the purpose that all his billions could never buy: human connection. The story reminds us that redemption often begins in the smallest act of kindness. A meal shared, a promise kept, a truth uncovered. No matter how broken the past may seem, love has the power to rebuild what was lost. And like Nathan, we can all choose to stop running from the storm and start becoming the shelter for someone else. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment about what moved you most, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories like this one to life. Together, we can keep spreading hope one story at a time.
If you want this type of stories, then subscribe to Golden Chapter Whispers.